We're going to study tonight the haftora of mikeitz, which is a haftora that we do not hear often because mikeitz almost always is Shabbos Chanukah, and then we always have the haftora of Shabbos Chanukah, which is Roni B'Simchi, and the haftora of mikeitz is taken from Malachim and is one of the most well-known stories in Tanakh. It's the story about the judgment of Shlomo HaMelech and the two mothers, the two women with the one baby, which has great relevance today in the unfortunate trial regarding the adoption of baby M and all these types of social problems which are now raised, which never existed before, or we never thought them to be real. Now they are. Now, the connection of the haftoras is because the parsha of mikeitz begins with a dream of Paro, the king of Egypt, who has this dream of the sheaves of grain and of the cows, the double dream which Joseph interprets to his satisfaction, and which forms, therefore, a key element, at least a turning point in the story. Now, Shlomo HaMelech, when he becomes the king, is a very young person, and he, in his dream, God appears to him and gives him choices, options, of gifts that he can ask from the Ribono Shel Olam, and which God will grant him. But his choices, like all choices in life, are limited. God does not give everyone everything. And therefore one has to choose. And Shlomo chooses wisdom as being the supreme gift. Whether that's a wise choice or not, life has to attest to that, because of the fact that the Talmud tells us, the Mishnah tells us, that the more wiser one is, the more frustrated one is. The wiser one is, the life many times is much more difficult. Oh, to be a simpleton. And knowing a great deal, understanding a great deal, being a very sensitive person, many times condemns that person to a life of emotional turmoil and of dissatisfaction, problems, whereas we all, somewhere in the corners of our heart, long for a simple life that is uncomplicated and does not make tremendous demands upon us. But in any event, that's Shlomo's choice. As an aside, I've seen many Meforshim comment that whatever Shlomo would have chosen would have eventually turned sour, because too much of anything is a mixed blessing. And Shlomo has the problem of having too much of everything, because he's the king, and he's wealthy, and he's the son of David, and he's so far a superior person that everything comes to him and comes to him easily. very difficult for him to deal with it. And he's a young person, and gifts that given to a young person are doubly hard to absorb. So that we see that Shlomo HaMelech essentially has a very tragic life. He was bar mitzvah. Shlomo was 12 when his father died. He was bar mitzvah when he ascended the throne. It's interesting that the Mishkan and the first Beis HaMikdash were both built by teenagers. But Sarah was also bar mitzvah when he began the beginning of the Beis HaMikdash. I guess that was instead of the party. Vayikat Shlomo v'hinei chalom. So the first verse is the connection to the verse. First verse is the connection to the verse that begins the parsha. That Vayikat Shlomo, Shlomo awoke, v'hinei chalom, and behold, it was a dream. By this statement, the Tanakh tells us the fact that we know sometimes a person has a dream and the dream is not real. We know it's a dream. The dream has so much fantasy, etc. to it that when the person awakes, or even while the dream is occurring, the person doesn't take the dream seriously, but he realizes that he's dreaming. But there are some dreams that are so real, that have such an impression upon not only the subconscious, but even upon the conscious mind, that when the person awakes, he awakes and he recalls the dream, and he recalls all the influence that the dream had, and the dream takes on, therefore, the element of reality and not just the element of a dream. Well, that was the case by Paro. When Paro got up with a start from his dream, so it says, Vayikat Paro, v'hinei chalom. Paro awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And that's the exact same series of words that is used to describe the dream of Shlomo. Vayikat Shlomo v'hinei chalom. Behold, it was a dream. It's so real to him that now only when he awakened did he put it into the perspective of a dream. Vayovo Yerushalayim. Shlomo traveled to Yerushalayim. Vayamod lifnei Aron Bris Hashem. And he stood before the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark that contained the Luchos Abris, the two tablets of stone that Moshe brought down from Sinai. So the Aron Bris Hashem was not in its permanent building yet, because Shlomo is going to build the Beis HaMikdash. He hasn't built it yet. So it was in the same tent that it was during the time of the life of his father David. Vayal Olos Vayah Shlomim. There did he offer sacrifices, and he made a korban Shlomim, which was a korban that everyone ate from it. The Olah, korban Olah, was consumed entirely on the altar. No one had anything from it. The korban Shlomim, however, and that's why it was called Shlomim, because it brought peace, harmony with it. The Kohen had from it. The Kohen who brought the korban had meat from it, and the owners who brought the korban, the person himself who donated it, so he ate from the meat of it, he and his family, and also part of it was burned on the altar. Ayas mishtel chol avodo, and he made a banquet. He made a feast for all of his servants in celebration of the good tidings that were given to him, in celebration of the fact that he was granted wisdom. So it's almost ironic that the first unwise thing that he does is broadcast that he has wisdom, because now people come to him for cases that ordinarily were insoluble. They could not get an answer from anyone, and now they came to him after having exhausted all of their other remedies because they wanted his wisdom. Now, wisdom in the idea of Solomon and that's the way it comes through even in general literature, Solomonic wisdom is more than just knowledge and good common sense. It also bears with it an intuition which is close to prophecy, the ability to know things that are unknown to most people. Our rabbis tell us that Shlomo understood the language of the animals and the birds. He understood the language of nature. He had an intuition, he had a sixth sense that was given to him that allowed him to explore mysteries and to come up with the answers. So if you have such a reputation, if you broadcast such a reputation, then people will come and test it. Let's put it that way. It will not go untested. So immediately he receives the test. There's not a dispute, but there are two viewpoints as to this gift of Shlomo and to whether or not he should have advertised it and whether or not a low profile would have been better. It's hard to imagine an emperor having a low profile. And Shlomo is just, to a certain extent, he's a prisoner of the circumstances in which he finds himself. Then the two women, zonos, who were immoral women. This is a case of no fathers. I mean, a father, but no one knows who the fathers are. The Meforshim comment that that's what makes this case so unusual, that they should have the nerve to come before the king, that such a matter should come to him. But that's so to speak, God's test. You wanted wisdom, okay, so here's we'll give you some. Right? Here's a good question. Here's a quandrum for you. Some of the Meforshim always are troubled by the word zona as it appears here, and it appears in a few other places in Tanakh, and they translate the word zona from the word zon, which means like grocery women or women that sold food or providers. You find in Tanakh, in Yehoshua, that the two Jewish spies stayed in the house of Rochav Hazona. And since later Jewish tradition says that Yoshua bin Nun himself married her, took her as one of his wives, so therefore it was hard to make it compatible with the literal translation of Zona. So there we find that most of the Meforshim say that the word Zona refers to the fact that she really ran a grocery store. She was a provider. Which the other meaning of Zona also is the same. It's just she provides something else. But it's the same basic thought. But here, most of the Meforshim say that Zonos, the women were immoral women. They were prostitutes. And that this further complicated the situation. That's why they came and not their husbands. That's why they're not represented by anyone. They have no standing in the community or in court. And they stood in front of him. And one of the women began the case. She said, Bi Adoni, please, my master, listen to me. I and this woman, we dwell together in one home, one house. And I gave birth at the same time that she was in the house with me. And she also was pregnant. She also was ready to give birth. The third day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth to a son. And we were alone together in the house. There was no stranger in the house. There was no one else there. We were the only two people in the house. Only we two were in the house. And therefore, it's obvious that there can be no proof here. So they are bringing to his attention a case that legally has no solution. Now, we have many times in halacha cases that come to the Beis Din. In halacha, the Beis Din is almost always limited to the rules of evidence and to the rules of proof. And if there's no proof, then the rule is hamotzi mechaver olav araya. If you want to take something away from somebody else, then the burden of proof is yours. Now, it may very well be that it is your item. But if you can't prove it, the court will not take it away from the other person. And therefore, we admit to a system of justice which is imperfect in the sense of ultimate justice. Because who knows? I come to court and I say, this person, it's my tie that he's wearing. I took off my tie, we were playing ball, and then when I came back, and he took my tie. And he says, I know what you're talking about. He said, that's not a legitimate tie. I had that tie. It's my tie. And I'm wearing it. So it may be that in ultimate justice, he did take my tie. He saw the tie there, and he put it on, and he took it, and he's a thief, and he's a gonnet. But the court will not do anything for me unless I'm able to bring proof that somehow it is my tie. So that, what will happen in ultimate justice is that he'll pay for the tie. Right? But how God collects, what period of time has to elapse, whether it's in his lifetime or his family or who knows, but God collects. That's the basic rule. We say it in the Mishnah and Avos, B'chol Yom V'Yom, every day. The Gaboyim leave heaven. The bailiffs are sent out from the court in heaven, and they collect. Bein medaito, bein shalom medaito. They collect whether we know or we don't know. Sometimes they collect from us and we know. We take a serious financial reverse. We know. Sometimes it's, that we don't even realize it, and we lost it, right? To get the automobile fixed, you have to we have a flat tire, or the roof leaks or something, so that's all ordinary, right? But meanwhile, I'm $500 poorer. But it's all collected, right? In heaven, somehow it all makes sense. It's all balanced. It's all on the sheet. But in the judgment that we have here on earth, we can't operate that way. We are not psychic. We can only deal with the rules of evidence. The rules of evidence provide motzi mechaver olav araya. You want to collect something, you prove it. You can't prove it, the other guy keeps it. So here they preface the entire situation by saying, no one was with us. There is no proof. So she's emphasizing that. She's emphasizing the point that you shouldn't think that there's going to be any proof, that somebody's going to show up, that there was an unseen person in the house, and that somehow you're going to be able to solve it that way. Vayomas benu isha azos loila asher shofra ala. The terrible thing she says, this woman suffocated her child, the newborn child, not purposely, by accident, whatever, but she was sleeping with her child, she suffocated the child. The child died. So this woman, got up in the middle of the night. She took my son away from me when I was sleeping. Your servant was asleep. I was asleep. So she's asleep. How does she know? But she's reconstructing the fact. That's the accusation. She cannot even make a direct accusation. vatashkivehu b'cheiko, and she took the live child, my child, to her bosom, and she just put the dead infant next to me. I rose in the morning to nurse my child, and there's a child that's dead next to me. So when the morning came, meaning when it was light, I looked at the child carefully, and I know that that's not my child. Now, that is, there's only the Tanakh can construct the scenario in a few words. That's the plot. You have here, untold emotions, just a bizarre series of events. And how is he supposed to solve it? And the tragedy that's involved, because one of them knows the truth. And yet the desire to have the child is so great that even if it's not your child, even if it's not, she doesn't want to be empty. Hatomer hoyisho ha'acheres. So the other woman responded, and she said, "Lo, that's not the story. Ibni achai uvnei chameis. My son is the one who is living, and your son is the one who is dead." Zosomeris, and then the other one responded, "Lo, bnei chameis uvni achoi. V'atidaberno lifnei hamelech." And they continued this argument in front of the king. So Shlomo has the whole picture here. By the way, we have here a famous phrase that was paraphrased later by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi has a poem regarding Christianity and Judaism. And he paraphrases it to say that yours is the dead son. Right, and ours is lying. Right, that's his paraphrase from the Pasuk here. Ibni achai ubnei chameis. Vayomer HaMelech, so the king says, let me restate the argument, right, so that we're all in agreement. Zosomer zeh b'ni achai ubnei chameis. This one says, this is my child who is alive, and your child is the one who is dead. And the other one says, no, just the opposite. That it is your child that is dead and my child that's alive. Is that correct? He says, we all are in agreement that that's what the dispute is about. Now, Shlomo here takes a long shot. Which is if he wins, then he is the genius, right? Then he proves himself. If he loses, so then he's guilty of murder and of everything else. Most of the reports can say he never would have gone through with it anyway. It was just it was the show of doing it. But he is looking for a dramatic way to force the truth out. And his supposition is that the real mother, will not allow her child to die. That's his supposition. During the war, we have countless incidents of parents who gave their children away to others, to non-Jews or anyone, or sent their children away many times in full knowledge that they probably would never see the child again, but so that the child would live. That's an emotion that is so strong within parents that it overwhelms all logic and almost all selfishness. And that's the emotion that Shlomo is relying upon. That at the moment of truth, the real parent cannot ignore the reality of the situation. It's better to have the child live and live away from the real mother than that the child should die, and he hopes that the real mother will come forward. Now that's a strong, strong chance that he's taking. Vayomer HaMelech Chuli Choret, so the king who says, bring to me a sword, Vayoviu Acherev Lifnei HaMelech, and they brought the sword to the king. The Forshim explained that he does it slowly, deliberately, dramatically, to give the parties time to think about it, to let their reaction build up here. Because one is going to look at it in horror. I think of this scene in the Bible, there are numerous great paintings that have been painted to portray the anguish and the drama of the moment, because it's a type of a scene that lends itself to that type of dramatic painting. So he orders that the sword be brought before them. Vayomer HaMelech Gizru et hayeled achai lishnoyim. The word Gizru in Hebrew, Gzeira, means to split in half. That's why the word Gzeira means a decree, right? To split it, to decree it, cut it in half. You give half to one and half to the other. King's wisdom. Right? The Talmud has the case, the famous case that begins from Mitzvah. Two people are holding on to a garment. One says it's mine, one says I found it, each one says it's all mine. They come to the Bezdin holding on to the garment, so Bezdin says, Yachloka, we'll divide it. We'll cut the garment in half, you have half and you have half. We'll sell the garment, give you each half the money, but we'll divide it. So Shlomo also says, we'll divide it. The matter is in doubt. You both are equal muzzakim, so we'll divide the garment. We'll divide the child. Atomer hoyishu asher beno achai al hamelech nichmeru rachameho al beno. One of the mothers came forward, the real mother, that her child was the child that was alive. Nichmeru rachameho. That's the phrase that's used in Tanakh. Her rachamim, her mercy, it was melted. She was no longer able to withstand the test. Before she mentioned here, by the way, that also is a connection to this parsha, because the parsha is Yosef and his brothers. Yosef eventually will be unable to exact revenge. He'll be unable to control his own emotion of mercy, which is built within him. And therefore he will reveal himself to the brothers prematurely. So here also, she cannot bear to see what will happen to her son. Atomer, and therefore she said, Hi Adoni, please my master, please the king. Tnu lo es hayolud hachai, give her this child that was born, who is still alive, give her this infant. The homeis al misuhu, and don't kill him. Don't kill him. Give it to her. It's her child. Now, why doesn't she say, it's my child? Why doesn't she say, listen, it's my child, but I'd rather have the child alive have him dead. Because her emotions, her sensitivity here is that he wants to do justice. He wants to prove how wise he is. And therefore, if she continues to say, it's my child, but you can have him, so then, in effect, his justice will be a mockery. Because if he listens to her, then he should give her the child. So she must therefore make an admission in such a fashion that will leave him free to render the decision completely and say, well, the other person confessed and that's it, case closed, goodbye. Also, the Meforshim comment on the words "V'homeis al temisuhu," don't kill him. It would have been sufficient for her to say, give the child to her. And when she adds the words "V'homeis al temisuhu," don't kill the child, so then that also is an extra dimension of emotion that is portrayed. She is saying what she really wants to say. What she wants to say is, don't destroy the child. The Zosomeris and the other woman said, Gam li, gam loch lo yiyeh. Not me, not you, right? Tough. If I lost my child, then you lose your child. Zoru. Cut it. In effect, that's what she's saying. She doesn't hear what she's saying, but he hears it. When she says, Gam li, gam loch lo yiyeh, so it's not only she's saying, now nobody will have, but she's saying, since I sustained such a loss, so then you're also entitled to such a loss, which is an illogical but very human type of reaction. There's a famous study in psychology of children with toys where the person running the experiment, each child was playing with a toy. They're playing with identical toys. Two brothers, and the person running the experiment broke the toy of one of the brothers, and that brother retaliated by breaking the other brother's toy, which is the human reaction, right? Gam li, gam loch lo yiyeh. Now, I can't have it, then you can't have it either. Because if I'm not allowed to have it, then you can't have it either. And therefore she says the awful words, Zoru, right? To cut him, kill him. We find this attitude, there's a prevailing attitude in so many areas of life. And sometimes it's justified. Scorched earth policy. Shimshon commits suicide and brings the temple down on the Philistines. There is justification, but sometimes, as in this case, it's just the terrible anguish of the moment. It's the terrible frustration that forces a person to behave in such a manner. Vayan HaMelech Vayomer. So the king said, wait. Now we know the truth. Tnu lo asayolu rachai, v'homeis lo sumisuhu I imo. Give her the infant that is alive, v'homeis lo sumisuhu, and do not kill him. I imo. There is no doubt that she is his mother. She is the mother. And the Meforshim point out that the opposite is also true. He could have said the other one is certainly not the mother. He chose to address it positively, that she is the mother. But one could address it negatively as well. One could easily say that it's obvious that the other one is not the mother if she would be willing to to allow the child to be killed. That's right. The Gemara talks about that. The Gemara talks about there are many cases like that. The Gemara, so that's why the Gemara says that ultimate justice is never done. In this world, you never know. The Gemara brings that there are people, the Gemara Bava Basra quotes, there are people that if they're engaged in a dispute, and they know that they're right, and they are right, but nevertheless they don't have the stomach for it. So they walk away from it. It costs money, so whatever. They walk away from it. What's the Bezdin supposed to do? The Bezdin cannot force you to fight. They're not going to fight your battle, and they cannot force you to fight your battle. There are people who are patronim, who give it up. But I imagine that in a case such as this, the emotion of motherhood is so strong that that's not likely that she would just do that. It's the combination of what the other woman said as well. Without the other woman, I don't think you'd have full case. But it's the combination of the fact that the other woman said, kill the child, so that made it doubly apparent to him. Yeah, right. That's right. Well, that's the insight. It's interesting that in Jewish tradition, this child grows up to be a great man, naturally. We always have that miraculous children are special. And the Talmud tells us the story about a Jewish child that was in prison in Rome and was redeemed by one of the great rabbis, and he grew up to be one of the great men of Israel. We always have these types of stories, always of children that were on the verge of death and annihilation, and they somehow are saved, and then they not only are saved to live ordinary lives, but they are saved for almost superhuman type of existence. The Meforshim always saw in that, by the way, a reflection of the Jewish people generally, not just the story of an individual, the story of the Jewish people generally, always being destroyed, or almost destroyed, or on the verge of being destroyed, and then somehow being saved, and saved for a purpose, saved for a great moment in history. This made a dramatic impact upon everybody that was there in court, everybody that saw, because until now Shlomo is an untried case. He is an unproven commodity. He says that God gave him wisdom. And he says that he's entitled to be the emperor of Israel. But he's really in power only because the power structure wants him in power. Because he's young and he really doesn't have any power of his own. So it's his father's compatriots and the establishment, the reigning order that put him in power. Now this all of a sudden raises him out of that level. Now Shlomo becomes Shlomo on his own, because this makes such a remarkable impression upon the Jewish people, and it becomes so publicized throughout Judea. Look at the genius of our king. Listen to this case. So that's what it says here in the Tanakh. Vayishmu chol Yisrael es hamishpat asher shafat hamelech. All the Jewish people heard of this judgment in front of the king, of this case, and what his decision was. Vayiru mipnei hamelech. And they were, Vayiru here means fear, respect. They were in awe of the king. Why? Because they saw that he had a super intuition. He would be able to, and they were afraid that he knew things that they did even in the secret confines of their homes and hearts. He had the ability to discern these things. And people don't like when other people know what they really are. The famous legend about the Ariya Kodesh, about Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the famous Kabbalist in Tzfas in the 1500s, was that he could look at a person's face and tell him or her what Averis, what sins were he was guilty of. So when that became not public knowledge, so the legend has it that people stopped coming to see him. That was the reaction to it. The famous legend with him and the Beis Yosef that he told the Beis Yosef that he saw on his face that they had stolen something. And the Beis Yosef was aghast, Rabbi Yosef Kara. And then he went home and he found out that his wife had once borrowed something from somebody and that never was returned. It's one of those types of legends that you can also see on a person's face. So that's what it says, Vayiru mipnei HaMelech. They were frightened. They were in awe of him. They elevated him to that superhuman pedestal. Because they saw that the wisdom of God was truly within him, that it was not an empty boast. It was not an unfounded claim that he was so wise, that he had this particular intuition, this particular greatness. They were very impressed with him, and they saw that the Chochmas Elokim B'Kirbo, the wisdom of God that was part of him, was La'asos Mishpat, was to do justice. That he was able to do ultimate justice, not just earthly justice, but ultimate justice. Now, Chazal tell us that Shlomo HaMelech was the exception, so to speak, to all the rules regarding judges and royalty. That he had 2 lions that were made out of gold at the side of his throne. You see that in other royal houses since then, that they imitate that. In Denmark, in the royal palace in Denmark, they have a sterling silver lion, 3.5 foot tall, solid sterling silver. And the Talmud tells us that the lions, he was able to make the lions roar, the inanimate lions, so that if people told a falsehood, if witnesses perjured themselves, the lions roared. And Mepharshim explained that psychologically, they only have to roar once. Well, if they have the reputation of roaring, so then people didn't tell lies. Then people were frightened. People were impressed to the extent that he was able to gather the truth from them. All of that is included in this idea, La'asos Mishpat, that he was given wisdom to render justice, to do what is just. We're talking here about ultimate justice, absolute justice, justice that transcends the laws of evidence, the laws of the courts. And that was his greatness, is that people realized this special quality that he had. The quality of being able to do justice in this fashion. Vayi HaMelech Shlomo Melech al Kol Yisrael. This concluding verse of the Haftora teaches us that Shlomo HaMelech was the king over all of Israel, meaning that there were many skeptics, as you can imagine. A young person assumes such a throne. And not only a young person, it's a hard act to follow David HaMelech. We have many times in history that, the successor to a great person has a very rough time. The successor to that successor has a much easier time already. But the successor to the great person is always judged in immediacy in comparison to that great person, and sometimes it's very, very hard. And because of that, Shlomo met with a great deal of silent skepticism from the people. And now when this matter became public and his wisdom was proven and his strength and his ability were on display, so then he was the king over all of Israel. Another interpretation is that and this remained throughout the time of the First Temple, is that a great many of the tribes resented the sovereignty of Yehuda. You had on one side the family of Shaul HaMelech, of King Saul, the tribe of Benjamin, that felt that it was slighted because of the fact that the Melucha was taken away from it and given to the tribe of Judah, even though that was prophesied in the Chumash. That's part of the story of Purim, is that it's Shaul HaMelech's comeback against the tribe of Judah. Because Mordechai and Esther are all descended from Shaul. They're all from the tribe of Binyamin. And then you have the northern tribes. So that's a competition between two brothers from the same mother and father, right? Yosef and Binyamin. Then you have the northern tribes, the 10 brothers, the 10 tribes, who will break away from Shlomo HaMelech. In the lifetime of Shlomo, they will already defect. They will prepare to defect, rather. And the moment his son Rechavam becomes the king, they do defect. And they become a separate kingdom. And they do not accept any longer the sovereignty of Jerusalem or of the house of David. So all of this was brewing. It was not unknown at the time that Shlomo came to power. And therefore there could have been a situation where his sovereignty was threatened immediately at the beginning of his reign. But again, because of this incident, he is called Melech al Kol Yisrael, the king of all of the Jewish people over all of Israel, because of his ability to solve this case and to exhibit his wisdom. The Meforshim point out another comparison here between the Haftora and the Parsha, is that Yosef and Shlomo to a certain extent resemble each other. In the Chumash it says that Yosef was an Ish Matzliach. Ish Matzliach is a successful person. We would say in today's parlance almost a lucky person. Whatever he does, it works out for him. He always lands on his feet. There are countless times here when Yosef one wrong turn and he is destroyed. He knows exactly how much to say to Paro. He knows exactly how far he can go. And he's an Ish Matzliach. In jail, he's Matzliach. Wherever he is, he's Matzliach. He has this secret of success, this gift that God has given him. And the Meforshim say that that was the secret of Shlomo also. Shlomo was an Ish Matzliach. He was a person that, there are people in the world like that, who just are successful, who have the ability to be successful. They're able to carry it off. And this occurrence is another example, or perhaps the first example we have here in Tanakh, of the ability of Shlomo to be an Ish Matzliach. And that stands him in very good stead for a long time, until finally, I think the key to being an Ish Matzliach is not to believe that one is an Ish Matzliach. The moment that one really believes it, so then disaster is not far. And the troubles that lurk under the surface all of a sudden rise. And that's what happens to Shlomo. He marries one woman too many. He is too wealthy, too powerful, too wise. He takes on too much. And in so doing, he is eventually driven from the throne of Israel. And his end is not as glorious as his beginning. In fact, as I mentioned at the outset, he's not a tragic figure, but what happens to him is tragedy in the strongest sense of the word. A person who has everything and ends up practically with nothing. And this is highlighted by his ability to be an Ish Matzliach, is highlighted by this incident, because he takes a very great chance, very, very bitter chance, and possibly can lose everything, and instead of losing, somehow he is able to carry it off, and in carrying it off it becomes successful, and he becomes a great person. Okay, we'll leave it here. Short haftora.